President John Adams has a hideous, hermaphroditical character which has neither the force and firmness of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. Thomas Jefferson. Well, politics have always been around, and it may seem like they're getting a little nasty whenever the election cycle comes up, but they could be worse. You could call your opponent a hermaphrodite. Now, since politics have always been around, and they always will be, it's good to understand a few basic principles about the political system so you can make a good, educated decision in the voting booth. And so 3 things that I'd like to talk about are the effects of scandals on a candidate, factors on outcomes of an election, and techniques used by candidates to get elected. So the first scandal I'd like to talk about is one that we've all heard about a few times. This lady, when she was Secretary of State, she had an email account on her private server, and then when she was done being secretary, she deleted about 30,000 emails, apparently with her husband who had sent only one in his life. And when the State Department requested her emails, she handed them printed copies. And the other ones that are deleted, that's been a big story in the news that has hurt her in the polls. And it's hurt her to the point where her and Bernie Sanders have kind of been neck and neck. And when you put her up against any Republican whose last name is not Trump, she is losing. The next one is, has anyone seen the movie Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, the next one is his evil twin, Rod Blagojevich. He was governor of Illinois when President Obama was elected president, and Obama is from Illinois. And so when Obama became president, he had an empty Senate seat, and he was in charge of filling it, so he had to appoint someone. Well, this guy started taking some bids from people who wanted it. He was going to make some money off the open Senate seat, and so people got wind of it, and he was losing great popularity. And so now he's going to be spending 14 years in prison. And whenever you see this guy's face, if you're not thinking about that tackle at the end of the game, you're going to be thinking about his legacy, which is just selling the Senate seat. Next one, Richard. He deleted 18.5 minutes of videotape talking about a scandal where he was going to have some people break into the Watergate complex to steal information from the Democrats. And so now, whenever people think of Richard Nixon, I bet most of you, when you think of him, you're thinking Watergate. You don't care what his policies were or anything, because all you can think about is he was a crook. And so that's a big effect that scandal had on him. The next point is factors on the outcome of an election. You know, New York Times during the 2012 election talked about how the economy plays a big role. President Obama won because at the time the economy was kind of in the tank, and so he was the opposite of what Bush was, because everyone blamed it on him, so he was the opposite, so he got in. JFK won, promising to get America moving again, and Ronald Reagan won, promising to get inflation under control. Another factor is what third-party candidate. So President George H.W. Bush was running for re-election in '92, and Democrat Bill Clinton was his challenger. And then Ross Perot, he's right-wing, so he has a lot of the same ideas as Bush, so they were splitting votes, and Bill Clinton was getting all the ones he would have got anyway. And so Bill Clinton was able to win with just 43% of the vote, and they split the other 56%. So if Ross Perot didn't jump into the race, President Bush probably would have gotten a second term. So the third-party candidate really can throw a wrench in the game. There was a lot of worry that Donald Trump would run third party when he doesn't win the nomination, and then the same thing would happen. We would get Bill Clinton's wife due to a third party. Another thing, elections is voter turnout. In 2012, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were both heavily emphasizing getting out to vote. They wanted all their supporters to get out to vote because not everyone does it. Only about a third of the country votes in the midterm elections. And now techniques used by candidates to get elected. Now, President Obama, he likes, when running for re-election, he liked to remind everybody that Osama bin Laden was killed. And so he was taking some credit for it, and then there was Republicans saying, well, he took a lot of convincing, and all he really did was okay the SEALs to go in to kill him. And so there was back and forth talking about that incident as to who should get credit for it. There's also, there's also pivot techniques. If you ever watch a debate, you'll notice candidates, when asked a question, they don't always answer it directly. Ted Cruz in a debate, they asked him, what's your biggest weakness and why? And he goes on talking about how Congress is too big, and then he says, if you want someone to have a beer with, I may not be that guy, but I will drive you home. Okay, thank you for that answer. And they can ask someone a question. So say they ask Obama, President Obama, about him raising the debt quite a bit during his presidency. He likes to remind people, well, you know, when I jumped in, Bush had already raised the debt a little bit. And look at the economy. I've raised it dramatically. And so he kind of pivots it to where the economy has gone up from where there's a negative to a positive. And President Bush would do the same thing about foreign policy, about how we're helping those in the Middle East. So in the end, the good thing to do when you're looking as to who you should vote for is to really look at their record, look at what they stand for, and to see if their policies that they want to put into place are something you agree with. It's hard to believe some of the things that the media say because they have their little spin on it, and they can use certain language to kind of endorse their candidate subconsciously to you. And so it's good for you to do your own study. And so, you know, candidates, they have scandals. There's so many different factors on elections. And so it really is important to just study. And so something I'd like to leave you with is what John Adams replied to Thomas Jefferson with. He called him a mean-spirited, low-lived fellow, the son of a half-breed Indian squaw, sired by a Virginia mulatto father. President John Adams.